like to welcome you all here on behalf of Columbia Law School, and welcome the Peter and Patricia Gruber Foundation back to Columbia. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's a real honor for us to play host to these awards. Prize awards are a difficult business. It's very easy to fall into patterns of rewarding the establishment, patterns of rewarding friends, rewarding people who look like you, organizations with which you're familiar. One of the things that's attracted me to this prize and has made me such a fan of the prize is that it's one that has avoided those traps. Where each year, as I've looked to see who have been the awardees in this and other prizes at the foundation, I learned something. I learned something about people who are breaking molds, about organizations that are doing things in a new and in a different way. Organizations that I haven't heard about, organizations you may not even be able to find out about in using the tools with which you're familiar, the Googles and the Wikipedias, because there are people and there are organizations that are out there in hard to reach places doing things that you haven't yet heard about, but things that are beginning to change the way that people around them experience the world. It's been very exciting to be a part of that process, and I welcome you here to share with us the pleasure that we've had this year in that selection. You all have, as you came in, cards that you were given, or if you haven't, you should raise your hand and get those cards at some point. It's for putting questions. We're not going to have an open microphone for questions later on, but we will have the opportunity to submit questions on those cards. So if you have them, write them down, raise your hand in the air, and somebody from the foundation will be here to take the cards from you. And now let me turn over the microphone to Patricia Gruber.
Thank you, Peter, for those kind and warm words. We are delighted to welcome you to the 6th Annual Women's Rights Prize and to be here at Columbia University Law School. We are very grateful to Columbia for hosting us, and we thank all of the seen and unseen hands that have contributed to making this event possible here at Columbia. And as Peter mentioned, we were here before in 2006 to present the Women's Rights Prize. And this is a wonderful venue. Columbia is a school that's a distinguished teaching and research institution with a strong reputation in support of human rights. And we're very grateful to be here. The Women's Rights Prize honors courageous individuals and groups who have made significant contributions to human rights that advance the rights of women and girls around the world. We are here today to honor the achievements of Yanar Mohammed, Sapana Pradhan Malla, and Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian, 3 women's rights advocates who have advanced gender equality in their societies by challenging religious, political, and cultural biases. But first, let me tell you a little about the company they are keeping with recipients of our other prizes at the Gruber Foundation. The Foundation's prize program was established in 2000 and gives 5 annual $500,000 prizes in the fields of cosmology, genetics, neuroscience, justice, and women's rights. Each prize recognizes achievements and discoveries that produce fundamental shifts in human knowledge and culture. In July, the Genetics Prize was presented to Alan Spradling at the International Congress of Human Genetics in Berlin, Germany. In September, at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, the Cosmology Prize was presented to J. Richard Bond. The Justice Prize was presented at George Washington University Law School in October to Thomas Bergenthal and Jerome Shestak. And in November, at the Society for Neuroscience meeting in Washington, D.C., John O'Keefe will receive the Neuroscience Prize. I'd like to acknowledge the vision and the leadership of my husband, Peter Gruber, and his contributions to establishing all of these prizes. Peter, would you stand up? courageous efforts anywhere in the world to help achieve gender equality. Laureates of the Women's Rights Prize are, most recently, Pinar Il-Karajan, Women for Women's Human Rights, and the Coalition for Sexual and Bodily Rights. Pinar is from Turkey. Unión Nacional de Mujeres Guatemaltecas, along with Cecilia Medina Quiroga and Sweatshop Watch. The Women's League of Burma, together with the Shan Women's Action Network. Sakina Yakubi and the Afghan Institute of Learning. And the first prize went to Navanithu Pillay and Profam Kwese Hamwe. And now to the presentation of this year's prize. A distinguished international board of advisors has guided the selection of this year's recipients. Its members are Sakiko Fukuda Par, Pinar Il-Karajan, Cecilia Medina Quiroga, Navanithu Pillay. Navanithu Pillay has been elected, nominated, chosen for the post of High Commissioner of Human Rights at the United Nations. And for that reason, she's no longer able to serve on this committee. But she did serve as the chair for this year's selection process, but is not able to be affiliated with us any longer. We have really appreciated her guidance and her contributions. Peter Rosenblum, Zainab Salbi, and Sakina Yakubi. Both Peter and I deeply appreciate the enthusiasm and the knowledge, the commitment that these advisors bring to the deliberations that are involved in the selection process. Before I ask the recipients to step forward, I'd like to invite some members of the advisory board to speak briefly about the tremendous accomplishments of these three women recipients this year. Sakina Yakubi, the founder and executive director of the Afghan Institute of Learning, is a laureate of the Women's Rights Prize, and she is a current board member of the selection committee. Sakina?
I am honored to be here. It's wonderful to see such a wonderful, fantastic event has been presented by Peter and Patricia Gruber's Foundation. And I am so delighted to present Yanar Mohammed. Yanar Mohammed is one of the gracious, talented, intelligent women of Iraq. She born in Iraq and she graduated from University of Iraq, Baghdad, and getting a master's degree in agriculture. And she is a wonderful human being. She has the heart and she has the talent. All her life, she sacrificed her life defending women's rights in Iraq, trying to help the women who have been abused, mistreated, and who have been depressed, oppressed. She provides services to try to defend the rights of these women. She is a co-founder of Organization of Defense of Women's Rights of Iraqi Women. And also she is a co-founder of an organization, Freedom of Women, Equality of the Women. She is trying to fight to bring equality just in Iraq. We are delighted that she is going to get this honor. I don't think anyone deserves more this honorary award than Yanar. Yanar has put her life in jeopardy to try to save other lives. Try to save the life of women who are facing traditional, local, religious intolerance in Iraq. As all of you know, the situation of Iraq, every day that she gets into go to work, she just feel like she will never will be back. And her father is here, and she is here to celebrate this wonderful event. And I would like her many wishes and success for this honor. And I would like to ask my fellow advisor, Sekiko Fukudapa, Professor of International Affairs in the new school, to speak briefly about another two-way awardee. Sekiko.
Thank you. This is my first association with the Gruber Foundation and the prize, and I have immediately become a great fan, finding out that this is really quite a unique source of support for causes that are often neglected. And it is a great pleasure and an honor for me to be associated with this endeavor, and today to introduce Sapana Pradhan Malla. She has been a leading light in the struggle for women's equality, dignity, and freedom in Nepal. A distinguished lawyer by profession, she has used her skills to fight entrenched discrimination that affect women in all spheres of life in Nepal. That is reflected in such statistics as an adult literacy level, which is only 35% for women, about half of what it is for men. This discrimination is also reflected in the high levels of human trafficking that threatens the lives of young girls. Her organization, the Forum for Women, Law and Development, has a fantastic track record of public advocacy, of networking, lobbying, public litigation, and empowerment of women throughout Nepal. It was Sapana who was the driving force behind the Supreme Court decision, the passage of legislation to criminalize marital rape, and the drafting of the Gender Equality Amendment Act and a Model Human Trafficking Act. These achievements notwithstanding, Sapana and Nepali women face the greatest challenge and opportunities today. And that is because Nepal is a new democracy. And it is the struggles, in fact, of people over the last decade that has led to the establishment of a democratically elected regime in Nepal. But the transition from authoritarian rule to democracy does not end with the removal of a king. It requires a whole new way of governing and changes in entrenched discrimination and public attitudes. And this will not be easy. And Sapana will be leading the struggle for women's rights in drafting of a new constitution, as she has been elected to the Constituent Assembly of Nepal. Mary Wollstonecraft wrote over 2 centuries ago, "It is not charity, but justice that is wanting in the world." And indeed, it is courage that is needed in the fight for justice. And I think it is this courage for which we applaud Sapana most, even though, of course, she has demonstrated extraordinary perseverance, determination, and intelligence. And we wish her all the best and the great success as she continues to lead the struggle for women's rights in building democratic Nepal, a democracy that is not only democratic in its institutions, but in its social values and practice. Thank you. And I'd like now to ask my fellow advisor, Professor Peter Rosenblum, clinical professor in human rights here at the Columbia Law School, to speak briefly about our third 2008 recipient.
Thank you very much. It's quite thrilling to be such powerful figures from countries like Iraq and from Nepal and from Palestine. The complexity of even beginning to introduce Dr. Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian comes in identifying where she's from and who she is. Because even the simple complexities of hyphenated identities, which we're so familiar with, are difficult when talking about a Palestinian from Israel. As she and others have pointed out, Israel for a long time insisted on referring to them only as Israeli Arabs, denying their identity as Palestinians in the Palestinian world. And to the rest of the Palestinian world, they were also viewed as being somehow often suspect in the roles that they played. So emerging in that world, triumphing in that world, confronting a society in which the discriminations are so multiple and manifest, whether from within the community of Palestinians, from among men, Israeli or Palestinian, and from within Israel, requires a sophistication and ability to cross lines and to deal with complexities that few of us are really fully comfortable with. Dr. Shalhoub-Kevorkian embodies this in her work as well. She is, as you know by now, a criminologist. She has her background in studies from Haifa and from Hebrew University, and from where she has her PhD. She's been a visiting scholar at the University of Southern California and a visiting professor at UCLA. She's the author of works such as Tribal Justice and its Effect on Formal Justice in Palestine, and Femicide in Palestine. She specializes in human rights and women's rights and has conducted academic research examining the multiple forms of violence inflicted upon Palestinian women and girls. She's prolific in her writing and in her teaching and lecturing around the world. She's also been very active with a broad range of international organizations in human rights and local organizations operating in Israel and working on Palestinian rights. And she's known, as I know from having asked her about her among my friends, as somebody who takes strong stands, follows principle, and acts on the basis of those principles in a way that others have uniformly grown to respect. Last night, when Dr. Shalhoub-Kevorkian was introduced, she immediately began to speak in poetry. And for me, as I mentioned at that time, it reminded me of the experiences that I had in Israel when I was young and began to reach out to the Palestinian community and the little language skill that I had, and to find that, to my surprise, that the first things that emerged were poetry, the stories of poetry, the love of the language, the love of the culture expressed in that poetry that has unified the people in the area. She's a woman who speaks in poetry, a woman who acts according to her principles and values, and who has chartered a path that many of us will continue to follow with real admiration and respect. Let me read the official citations for this award and then turn things over to the awardees. The Peter and Patricia Gruber Foundation proudly presents the 2008 Women's Rights Prize to Yanar Mohammed, Sapana Pradhan Malla, and Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian, three activists devoted to enhancing women's rights and empowering women under the most difficult conditions of armed conflict and war. Yanar Mohammed, co-founder of the Organization of Women's Freedom in Iraq, for fighting tirelessly to stop the eradication of women's rights in Iraq. The Organization for Women's Freedom is a women's organization that's continued to speak out openly for women's rights against all odds. Sapana Pradhan Malla, a member of Nepal's Constituent Assembly, for fighting to include women's rights in the Constitution, and as a member of the Forum for Women Law and Development, for leading the successful effort to decriminalize abortion and to criminalize marital rape. And Dr. Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian, a Palestinian feminist activist and researcher, for concentrating on sexual abuse and femicide, abuse that puts women in a state of living death during times of war. Could our awardees come forward then to receive the prize?
from a long way from Baghdad. We have witnessed much destruction in the last 5 years, but it wasn't only that. The lives and bodies of women have also had their share, fighting for the freedoms of women, for their rights in Iraq. All that women activists face there is being discredited by the tribals, being fought against by the fundamentalists, being chased by militias. All of it is negative, negative. The easiest thing would have been to keep silent and see where things go. It is great to see that around the world there are those who choose to support us, to make us stronger, to empower us in such a day. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Peter. You make us stronger for such a fight. Above all, I wish the war to end from Iraq and for the troops to come back to their families. But then again, for us, ending it all without the freedoms of women does not mean anything. Without peace, without our lives, living them securely doesn't mean much. Freedoms of women have been appreciated today, so I like to repeat it over and over again. Thank you very much. We always tell the women in Iraq that there are good people in the states that did not start the war. They may end it and they may help us to achieve equality and freedoms for women in Iraq. Thank you for this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our country, Nepal, always strived for peace. But the peace we wanted was differently perceived than we wanted to experience. As a result, we lived in insurgency for years. We lived our life, but dying every day. We lived our life without dignity and freedom. As a lawyer, I was expecting I will work for the empowerment of women using the law as a tool. But what I encountered, 118 laws directly discriminating against women. Research-based advocacy, public interest litigation, social mobilization were used as a strategy for change now. Yes, in Nepal, women are able to inherit parental property. Abortion has been legalized with many other legal reforms. I believe nothing but the equality can sustain the efforts for peace. For me, the rule of law without equality is tyranny. Working on women's rights is not an easy task. You challenge socialist structure, you challenge cultural values, you challenge religion that is prejudice to women. You also challenge the state. The day Supreme Court of Nepal declared marital rape as a crime, many people appreciated, but some people said women like Sapana should be killed. They even said women like her should be raped. You don't have to be raped by saying you can be traumatized. Culture is not static. From naming as a social structure, now I'm elected as a member of the Constituent Assembly. I'm a member of Parliament. The day this award was announced, this was the head news of all the main leading newspaper and media. Everyone is excited. Nepal is in the conflict transformation process. This award has given me more political visibility to represent women as a constituent in the constitution-making process in Nepal's change agenda. I'm so grateful to the Gruber Foundation and team of the judges. You have recognized Nepali women's struggle for change. You have also recognized state's response for change. I'm so happy to have here the representative of Nepal's permanent mission. Our fight against inequality is a collective effort of women's movement and different institutions, national and international. I see Ford Foundation here, Equality Now here. I'm so happy to hear with me two friends from Nepal, Bharatiji and Madhavi, who were part of our struggle. And I'm so happy to have my Sadhguru uncle to witness what change is taking place and how reformation is recognized in abroad. And I'm happy to have my husband Ashok, who always inspires me to fight with inequality. Jessica and the Coalition team for being with me and making a Nepali woman visible in the international field. I accept this award more as a responsibility than a privilege. I'm going to use most of the money to establish a shelter, but we need more hands and hard to make it happen. Patricia and Peter Gruber, we are indeed so grateful for your effort to recognize the work of women from the world and inspiring all of us. Thank you, all the organization, media, for being with us in this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Peter, for the wonderful award. Thank you, wonderful friends that came to support and to be with me. And thank you, my beloved family. I must say that I never thought that I'll be able to, or we will be able to be remembered when talking about human rights awards as Palestinians and as a Palestinian in Israel, as a citizen of the state, but a citizen without citizenship. And here I am getting this award, and the meaning of this award means so much. It's acknowledging, it's remembering us, it's remembering that there are Palestinians there, and there are not those people that everybody is afraid from, because this politics of fear and the security theology that is affecting our mind, our way of looking at things, is all over. And I do not want to talk about what's going on inside Palestine. I want to talk about the responsibility of the global community. Because by seeing us, by remembering our voice, by listening to our voices, by knowing that we're there, we're still under so much pressure, under militarization, under occupation, under so much deprivation. And when looking at women's voices, and when looking at my power, my knowledge, my writing, my activism is usually borrowing meaning from the absent voices of women, trying to see the invisible and to try to invisibilize the invisible. But I was thinking of how could I share with you at least and tell you thank you. And I was thinking of something. 2 years ago, I'm working with a group of women, preparing them for public hearing. And these women suffer from the Israeli policy of house demolition. They live beside my house in Silwan village. And in one of the meetings at night, we were preparing for the public hearing in order to share with the people the voices and the hardships of women suffering from housing demolitions. We were sitting in that small room in Silwan, and there comes a piece of paper thrown by little girls, 12 and 13 years old girls, wrote me a letter. Dear human rights activists, it was fascinating with their handwriting, and it was signed by Banat al-Hara, the girls of the neighborhoods, and they were asking me to tell the international community to take care of their homes, because they love their rooms, they love their beds, they want to stay, they do not want to lose their houses. I think those are the voices. Women's agency, women's power never cease to amaze me. And if there is a reason why I'm standing here and continuing the struggle, is the power of women in the different places, whether in the Naqab or whether in Nazareth, whether in Akka or whether in the Gaza Strip or West Bank. So thank you very much for this award. And I really hope we continue acknowledging and remembering the voices of Palestinian women and men.
Thank you to all three of you. We give hope, I think, to the whole efforts on behalf of gender equality and women's rights. Thank you so much for your work, and let's congratulate them again. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Zainab Salbi, who will serve as the moderator of the panel, the symposium, that is entitled Ensuring Women's Rights in Times of Conflict and in Times of Peace. Zainab is the founder and CEO of Women for Women International, which is an organization that provides women survivors of conflicts with tools and resources to move from victimhood to active citizens. Over the last 15 years, Women for Women has supported 153,000 women in 9 countries. Zainab has received numerous awards for her work. In 2007, she was selected as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. In 2006, Women for Women International received the very prestigious Conrad N. Hilton Humanitarian Prize, the world's largest humanitarian award. Ms. Salbi has dedicated her life to the belief that stronger women build stronger nations. Zainab.
Thank you, Pat, for this introduction. Appreciate it. And I am such a privileged woman to be in the company of not only incredibly courageous women, but as you said, incredibly poetic as well. I think it's also a critical time for us to get together and get your views on the solutions for the countries that, or your perspective, or woman perspective, for how to build peace in the countries where you come from. There isn't a more critical and historical time for us in America to have this discussion and to hear your views than it is now, as we have a new administration and we're all preparing for a new discourse in a lot of things, including world politics. One of the most important things, as someone who works in war, is how do we understand war not only from the frontline discussion but from the backline discussion as well. We often in America or in the Western world talk about war only from a military discussion, only the fighting and the bombing and all of that. How it is how do we get into the discussion of understanding it, not only understanding war but understanding peace from a backline discussion? How do we really look into the building of a sustainable peace? And so I have, my first question is Yanar, which is an honor to be in her company as a fellow Iraqi woman. Yanar, particularly about Iraq, and I think everyone wants to hear your voice now more than ever before. Everyone is talking about Iraq, the withdrawal of the troops, the keeping of the troops, all of the withdrawal of the troops, inshallah. What, in your perspective, but in other words, the discussion is limited to the military discussion still. What, in your perspective, in your views, are the critical discussions of how to build peace in Iraq that are not being addressed at the moment in the political discourse?
Of course, there's the civil side and there's the military side, but there's something in the middle that doesn't get mentioned a lot, the paramilitary groups in Iraq, which have made it part of their political agenda to kill women all over the cities. When women are being killed and dumped on the side of the street as an outcome to the chaos that happened in Iraq, it's not considered news. Not in Iraq, not in the outside world. When the hospitals cannot function well and pregnant women cannot pay for their hospitalization to have childbirth, this is not considered news. When the Constitution is written in a way that women have totally lost their rights and our rights were surrendered to Sharia, this is not considered news. It's, in our view, it's genocide committed against the current and the future women of Iraq. And how is it possible that it is not considered news? So when the women are covered and veiled politically in ways that we have not witnessed before in Iraq, that is not considered news. We hear that it is called our culture in Iraq. Being Afghanized in a way that we have turned into an Afghanistan under Taliban within a few years is not considered news. All of this is happening, and many of us are on the ground to witness it, to say that it is there and that we will not be quiet about it. In Iraq and in the Middle East, in general, you turn on the TV, in every other channel, you see a woman that is being humiliated, is being beaten, is being told
to keep her limits. All the media tools are misogynist. Women have been systemically pushed into a very bad place in the society. And this cannot happen in times of peace. This could not have happened if the change in Iraq against Saddam could have come in another way. It is possible to do because Iraq and all of the Middle East is under war. In Iraq, it is direct war. In the Middle East, as a region, it's indirect kinds of war. So the ways to support and to bring about the other culture that could be called democratic in a way is to have all of these negative sides, negative aspects worked against. In our opinion, at this point, the state in Iraq is very hard to negotiate with. The state that has been put in place is mostly fundamentalist. In Iraq, we call them political Islamists, and they have totally worked against the rights of women. The media is totally misogynist, and it is time to give women the tools to empower themselves. At this point, we are working towards building our media for women, the women's television, which we call al-musawat, means equality television. And this is where we decided to put a good part of the award money into, and to start a possibly groundbreaking tool that could turn the whole thing around for women, starting from Iraq and spreading over to the Middle East. And in our opinion, the rights of women, the freedoms of women is the arena to start in order to counteract the terrorism that started in 9/11. Military intervention did not do it. Terrorism is more now, not only politically, not against all of the world, but specifically against women. We did not look like black spots before this intervention. And in our opinion, 9/11, the answer, the response to 9/11 should be within the women's rights arena. So that's why we decide to start from there, to start a women's television that addresses all of the Middle East, and starting from Iraq, to tell the women, let's not submit. Let's begin thinking about it. Is this really our culture to submit, to go back to the corners of our houses and hide in them, and to give the misogynist men all the decision-making places? This is not our culture. So this is where we're starting from, a civil answer to a military problem that has started in Iraq. And I'm really happy that you bring up this question, because just like the problems against Iraq started from this part of the world, maybe the answers and the solutions could start also from here. So I welcome all the people who would like to be part of this project, Al-Musawat Television, Equality Television, which will start to empower women from Iraq to the Middle East, and it should be the answer to terrorism against women and terrorism against all of the world, the civilized world. Thank you, Zainab.
Thank you. I know a lot of you may want to speak more with Yanar as we talk about Iraq and its future. And equally, we'd want to speak with Nadera about Palestine and how do we bring peace over there. In your opinion, I think one of the things that Yanar was talking about, which I totally believe in, is violence often starts with women, actually. Yet when we are negotiating peace, and yet when we are talking about the details and how do we end violence and all of that, women's voices are rarely incorporated. In your opinion, how do you believe women measure successful and sustainable peace in the different definitions of peace, economic, from an economic angle, political, human rights, constitutional, democracy, all of that?
Well, I think that I would like maybe to share how do I see peace, justice more than peace, though. Because there's also, this is what I believe, there's a serious industry of peace, and everybody believe in peace. But when believing in peace,
especially from a feminist perspective, my feminism means that as a woman, men and women are my supporters. I do not differentiate or divide and say, okay, well, my feminism, at least my Palestinian feminism and the way I was doing it, men were not my enemies. Those that were working with me, those that were supporting us, and those that are male feminists, as we say. And I guess that reaching justice and reaching a better life for us as Palestinians means that we start looking at the structure of violence. We start looking at the structure of violence from different perspectives, from the global to the local. You could never, ever divorce what is going on in the field, in Palestine, and to Palestinians in Israel without looking at the general picture, without looking at what is going on the global level. And if you look at the way the international community is looking at us, whether as Palestinians in Israel or as Palestinians living in the West Bank and Gaza, there is kind of a dancing with denial, hearing our voices without hearing our voices, asking us, okay, why aren't you peaceful? Why don't you hug each other and live with each other? While without even taking into consideration the effect of economic strangulation on us, the way the structure is affecting us, the allocation of resources. If I will give you one example regarding education of Palestinians in Israel, and I will tell you that the state of Israel is supporting the individual Jewish Israeli student 6 times more than the individual Palestinian Israeli student, both that are citizens of the same state. That is discrimination. And that specific, even in looking at education by itself and the militarization of our education, and this is the state of Palestinians in Israel, I could tell you that it definitely affects our future support and the way our kids, the way the youth are. So if we don't have specific and proper and equal and just allocation of resources, you're definitely going to see society that suffers. If I'll go to the West Bank and Gaza and I could tell you checkpoints, I just finished a study on the militarization of education. And even, the Palestinian Central Statistic Bureau and the Minister of Education was looking at, and they were naming it, school dropouts among girls. And they mentioned, and they called it school dropout of girls. Now, when the girls are unable to reach their school because of the military checkpoint, because of the Israeli separation wall, because of the fear of being able to walk in the street, this is not school dropout. This is militarization of their education. This is deprivation of education rather than school dropout. So I guess that we need to start looking properly. And as an international community, if we'll kind of turn a blind eye and look at women's education and boys' education, because this is my feminism, at least from my own perspective, if we won't look at health, the latest statistics shows, for example, talking about measures, that women previously, 6% used to have to give birth on checkpoints. Now we have much less, which is wonderful. Everybody is looking at it as wonderful. Well, look at it carefully. And this is my feminism. When you look at it carefully, you end up looking that women are so afraid of waiting on checkpoints and not being able to pass, so they're having cesarean operations before time and going to hospitals and having kids before time. And this is why you don't have so many cases of women giving birth on checkpoints. It doesn't mean that their health condition is better. It means that the militarization of our spaces, the militarization of our time. If I want to go to Ramallah, if I want to work in Ramallah, it will take me so long. My time is so important. And furthermore, the production of knowledge. As you know, I'm the director of the Gender Studies Project at Mad al-Karmel, an organization that works on research in Haifa, a wonderful organization that's investing in supporting young scholars, young Palestinian scholars. I could tell you that I have over 20 young Palestinian women that are just finished their masters, doing their PhDs. What are the employment possibilities for them? When you compare it inside Israel, their ability to find a job, their ability to promote themselves. Well, of course, we can't work in the Ministry of of security affairs or whatever, we cannot work in so many places, then, we are ghettoized, even in terms of our employment. So our economy and our economic, even if we are managing to get the proper education, we're still affected. So looking at education and production of knowledge, our history, do you think that we've ever had somebody documenting the history of Palestinians in Israel, what happened in 48? Talking to my mom, who needed to leave Haifa in 48 with 3 kids, fearing being abused and so on due to the establishment of the State of Israel. The stories, the voices are not heard. Our history, our economy, our rights and the right to survive as human and human are not, we're still struggling. We're still struggling. And I thought that supporting young Palestinian scholars at Mad al-Karmel, and part of the money is going to starting this wonderful fund. And I'm so happy, and we're hoping to have more and more donations in order to promote it, is to promote, to bring hope. Between this psychology of humiliation, of you don't have right, you don't have, you're under military, and then asking us to manage and to survive. Well, this is what always requires serious genealogical analysis, looking at the different layers of oppression, and then trying to look at the structure and the way this structure is affecting the individual man and the individual woman. And this is why, Yanar, you were talking about violence. This is why you see violence. It's not because, and this tendency always to culturalize, it's the Palestinian culture, it's the Arab culture, it's the Islamic culture, and this Islamophobia that is driving everybody nuts. It's time to start looking at the structure of oppression, at the global power and hegemonic power holders that are further marginalizing us, that are further ostracizing us, that they do not see us. And this is where I think that the measures should be not only internal measures, but rather also the role of the global community of international organizations, of people like wonderful people that are sitting here, my friends that write about it, my friends that donate, and that believe in the importance of looking at our history, allowing us to look at our history. And my mom has a beautiful proverb in Arabic. We're going back to Peter's argument regarding me, but اللي بيشلح ثيابه بعرة. He who takes off his clothes will end up naked. We are what we are. This is our, we are Palestinians. We are the people that have the right to live, to survive, but with dignity and not with humiliation. We'll be able to build and to buy a house in our land, in Haifa or in Yafa, or the way I want, and not ending up fighting in order to be able to survive. This is my feminism. My feminism is not, is not constantly surviving, but living. The question is if we are living.
I wish we have more time. We don't have that much time, so we have a last question for Sapana. Sapana, you have so much background in legal and legislative and constitutional aspects of including women in transitional period. Are women included in this particular political structure in the decision making in Nepal? And if not, how do you think the political debate will change with women's contribution as a full part of it?
Today, Nepali women are in mood to convert a reason for insurgency into peace through the inclusion, through the republican system, through the federalist structure, through the democratic values. We are happy that we have opportunity because we are in the Constituent Assembly 33% women. We feel like we both male and female will participate in the decision-making process, not before like men giving and female begging. One hand, we are proud that we have 33% women in the Constituent Assembly. Diversity has been reflected, but other hand, we have a challenge how to make this diversity functionable. But the question which we need to deal today, whether this 33%, even this 33% has been reflected in other state structure or not. If you look at the judiciary, 2%. If you look at the executive, 10%. If you look at the other civil servants, not even 10%. And within the political structure, if you look at the party structure, only 9% women are within the decision-making process. So, until and unless women are there as a driving force, how can we be involved in the change agenda? And this is where we are thinking how to make law and politics woman-centric. Because up to now, law and politics are culturally, politically dominated by male, and even law is made in male standard and in male values for male, even for female. But then we see we have some opportunity. The opportunity how we have got at this moment is that we are going to write a new constitution, and even to participate in the new constitution, the opportunity we got is through the new election law that guaranteed a proportional representation of women in the Constituent Assembly. Though, I mean, again, like we sometimes debate whether law changes society or society responses legal change. But coming from the legal background, what I feel, law is an initiator of change. Law is also indicator of change. Law is also integrator of change. When you have a legal framework, then only you can make a state accountable. And therefore, like if we look into the party manifesto of all political parties, what we have found that all the political parties have said that they will ensure 33%, minimum 33% representation in all the state structures. So we have certain tool, even the interim constitution has that provision to make the parties accountable, to make government accountable to ensure the participation of women in the state structure. But again, like having law is not enough, because one hand, definitely, if we really want to be, we want to ensure women's participation in politics, there has to have a legal framework. But at the same time, we need to create institution. We need to create mindset which is willing to be inclusive. But again, like until and unless we have certain enabling environment, for example, sharing the responsibility inside the house, until and unless women are economically empowered, until and unless women are educated, until and unless women's capacity as a right holder is built, no matter what kind of legal framework we may have, no matter even if we will make a new constitution, it is not going to make any difference in the life of women. Therefore, what we feel, a law need to put into place for the practical realization of the right, and I believe if we all work together, we can make difference. Thank you.
Thank you. We have very short time for questions and answers, but I'll ask you one question for everyone. Is obviously we in America are all excited about the new administration coming in, and I think the rest of the world is. The question is, what strong message or messages would you most want us to bring to the Obama White House, and what is the strongest message? What is one message that you want us to bring to the Obama White House from each of the countries? What's that?
Well, I must say that I was extremely excited about this election, and it's wonderful to see someone who was always, at least, talking about African Americans, and here, someone from the margin being at the center. The question is how to recenter the center, is the question. And how to recenter the center is by bringing voices of the marginalized, worries of the marginalized, the ordeals of the marginalized into consideration, and not being affected by the center and forgetting about the margin. That's the question, you know. And I am hoping. I'm a very hopeful person, and I believe in the power of hope. I think that at least from the campaign, during the campaign, I was very excited about President-elect Obama, and I'm really, really hoping that he'll be able to see us, and he will be able to hear us, and he will remember that Palestinians are still waiting for someone to consider them and to take them into consideration. That might recenter the center.
Thank you. Sapana?
Before I came, people in Nepal said, see, in USA, the inclusiveness has ensured only now. For the first time, even a black could be the president. But I don't want to take this message back to home. I want that the inclusiveness which has been represented as a head of the government, head of the state, that would translate in the policy, that is translated to the people, and all the developing countries would get adequate attention with new political dimension where women's rights are respected and peace is promoted.
I guess it's my turn. One thing comes to mind. If I want to put it in one phrase, pull out the troops, pull out the troops, pull out the troops immediately. We don't need to wait long. As long as they are there, we're still having problems in Iraq. The troops need to be pulled out immediately. And of course, we were quite happy to get rid of the Bushes who have bombed us, first in '91 and then bombed us again in the last years. We hope that the new administration will not be an initiator of wars around the world. To tell you the truth, I get disturbed when I hear over CNN they're calling Obama commander-in-chief, which gives me the message that he has his finger on the trigger, because the message of ending racism has started from this part of the world to spread out to the whole of the world, and it hasn't happened anywhere else. So giving mixed messages of having a different color on the trigger is not really the good thing to do. I think the Democrats should make the message stronger, stop the wars, pull out the troops, and end racism. It's all different sides of one coin, which should be trying to go to a better world. Pull out the troops. That's it.
I have to. As you know, I'm an Iraqi myself, so I can't help but ask Yanar another question, but I have another question for everyone. Maybe we start with Yanar and move backward. To all recipients, who are the greatest role models for promoting women's rights in your country, besides yourself, I would say? And are there historical figures in your own culture in that aspect? So as we answer that, Yanar, I want to ask the question is, beyond pulling out the troops, what next? Pull out the troops, and what's the policy towards Iraq? So if you can just address that and then take on this question about the cultural figures.
Any talk about democracy, if women are not equal to men, there is no talk about democracy. When you have a country where the troops have pulled out but have left their forces of darkness who keep us under a dark cover, that is not called democracy. We need a constitution that acknowledges, recognizes full equality. We need the women to have their full rights in this constitution. And we do have a history of strong women in Iraq. As you know, Zainab, we had a woman minister in 1950s. The equality for women is not a new story in Iraq. We just need to claim it back, and we need the egalitarians of the rest of the world, especially of this part of the world, to be with us. secular constitution, egalitarian constitution, and enough division of Iraqis on religious, sectarian, and ethnic lines. We do not deserve racism to be applied on us. This part of the world is getting rid of racism, so why export it to Iraq? We weren't like this in the times of the bloody dictatorship, so why now? Democracy cannot be achieved with women veiled, covered, and silenced by force. Women need to speak out, and they need to be supported from this side of the world as well as on our side.
Thank you. Sapana, who are your role models or role models for women's rights in your country?
There are many, but for me, most importantly, when I hear pain, when I see pain, suffering, when rights are denied, people cannot get justice, those people I see as a role model, because only they challenge the culture. Sometimes they challenge the law, they challenge the value. But when state takes religion, and when we are unable to create demarcation between religion and culture, when in the name of protection of culture and religion we continue the discrimination, you cannot protect the right of women. Therefore, religion is a belief, it's a way of life. And since Nepal has recently declared it as a secular country, we have been saying that culture is not static. Culture is changing, values are changing, and then we all need to change first ourselves, and then respect those people who have given their life, remember those people, and then work for change, creating democratic values, because democracy and rights goes together, because it, depending on the level of democracy and depending on the level of development process, equality can be achieved.
Thank you. And Nadera.
Well, it's hard to say one person is a role model, because I guess that I could start with the young Palestinian girls that continue to walk the walk and to reach school despite all the hardships and fears of harassment and of abuse, to the wonderful women that are working and writing, to the wonderful women that are sitting here. We have Professor Nabil Al-Basel, who's working and writing. And these are the women, from the young to the wonderful scholars that are working and writing and keeping our voices and keeping our work and allowing us to be proud of what we are. When I look at Nabila's writing, when I look at the young women and girls that are reaching the school and, hearing them carrying their backpacks, hiding things in their backpacks and continuing the walk and looking at the soldiers and being able to handle the soldiers, these are the women and wonderful women that are writing poetry, that are dancing, that are working, that are fighting, that are raising kids. Women's power of love, women's power of continuation, women's power of survival, women's power of giving life, women's power of love. And love is a practice of freedom.
Well, it's again an honor to be in your company in a small way. I think the one thing we can all do is not only echo the voices and the views that you brought up today, your voices, but also I would say the one thing that we need to ask is to the White House to invite the women in the panel today and talk with them directly. That would be. So thank you so much for your contribution, and definitely thank you for the Peter and Patricia Gruber Foundation for your own acknowledgement and bringing it to the limelight, both in your voice and your resources. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. We could go on and on, I'm sure. This is very rich. We are now at the end of our program, and we'd like to thank Zainab, and we'd like to thank Yanar Mohammed, and Sapana Pradhan Malla, and Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian for their participation, for their work. We hope you keep on and are successful in all that you do. And you have lifted us up, and we hope this has lifted you as well. We thank everyone who has contributed today, and this includes the Gruber Foundation. Sarah, we thank you, Sarah Rea, and we thank Toya Phillips, who has been behind the scenes on many tasks to make today a success, and Bernita Aiken, who is here from our St. Thomas office. We thank the advisors and selection committee members who are with us today, and we especially thank Columbia University and Peter Rosenblum for all that you have done to host us here. Please join us upstairs for a reception on the 7th floor in the Case Lounge. It is in room 701. So we will thank you. Let's have another hand for